Power of words.
Power words. We're going to be talking about. Oh, hello. Hey, today on Fresh Talks Global Vision, I'm honored to welcome Leila Kubesch, whose work so beautifully aligns with what we stand for here, opening voices, strengthening connection, and helping people lead without blame, shame, or isolation. I know for sure I really want to start talking about words right away, but I want to give you some more introduction to what Leila does and how this combination of Fresh Talks Global Vision, how we're working today to connect with this TEDx awesome speaker that really has a bigger purpose and has a great big following. Leila's mission centers on helping leaders and communities communicate clearly, collaborate intentionally, and build cultures where people feel supported, valued, and ready to contribute. She reminds us that when communication breaks down, people disconnect. But when we learn to ask for support, share ownership, and speak with courage, trust, and belonging, grow. That's the heartbeat of us here at Fresh Talks Global Vision is our humanitarian movement, hashtag speaker locking arms. It's opening voices so that we stop blaming and shaming instead of building this misunderstanding, not really understanding responsibility and learning what our impact is. Like I want to really open that up to explore if we start looking at those areas. Because it's kind of, I love this that Leila, we're in this space of like, the first thing I think about is, well, first off, let's welcome you in, Leila.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'm grateful to be with you.
I'm grateful too. I know we were in the green room for quite a while trying to figure out how to get started. So it's wonderful that we finally got connected and we are going now. The thing that I start thinking about is when I look at your TEDx and I look at your website and look at LinkedIn and just kind of feeling this out. There's this thing I think about with words and communication and where that can take us from down here to really lifting and being able to do it in the right way so that we really get strategically where we want to go and the outcome that we want to have. So can we start this conversation around what your understanding is around that, around words and communication and what your specialty is around that?
There's a lot of power in communicating, and I didn't realize this, for a long time. I thought, well, maybe because English was not my language. And so I struggled with that. And I come from North Africa. We are a group where I grew up. My grandmother is saying, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. And yeah, just it's my grandmother. She did not go to school. She did not get to be educated because of during the World War II, where she grew up. So when I came to the US, I embraced this self-reliance, this independence, and then I not only I loved it, but I thought, my background is backward. This is the way it needs to be. And then I found myself an educator teaching in high need community where if you want anything, you want it, you go get it because there's no funding. And suddenly I found that this method didn't work, this working alone. And I thought, if I'm going to do, I loved my students. And I just loved them because they taught me so much. I remember one day, it was right after lunch, and I came to my classroom and I saw this kid, 8th grader, Brad, with a yardstick right behind his best friend. And I screamed in horror. I says, Brad, don't even think about it. And smack, he hits his friend and he goes, sorry, teach, I already thought about it. And everybody burst laughing, including the victim. And luckily we had it as an old room. It was carpeted. Like, you should go to the nurse, get that checked. And he couldn't even stand up straight. He was tears, and I couldn't tell if he was hurt or he was just laughing. But I realized there is power in the English, in English language, or in any language for that matter, that sometimes we say phrases that don't mean anything. And we just think it does. And I remember thinking about when there's a will, there's a way. I'm like, what is the way? Nobody's guiding me. And I decided to change it to be when there's a will, there's a new skill. What do I need to learn to take my students from here to there? Because these kids who are so amazing and so cute, I don't think that success should be a matter of geography. I wasn't willing to go by that. And sometimes I think when you really pay attention to the intuition, we are led to see things, and it's up to us to really see them. And one day my students asked me this ludicrous ask. The school just announced that the next day will be the coldest with our first snowfall, and it was March. And my eighth graders looked at me like, can you teach us outside? Like, no. I was gonna put my foot down on a put down, and I ended up putting it on a mound of snow because not only I agreed to teach outside, but I brought them hot chocolate and they had the best time. On the way back to the school, one of the eighth grader was packing this thing, and I looked back and like, is he looking at me? And I said, if you hit me with that snowball, I will see you after school. And he goes, oh, it is worth it. And he hit me. I said, see you after school. He came at the end of the day and I says, you get 24-hour notice. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know. I thought about it yesterday. And he cleaned the classroom. And I said, you don't have to do anything. Just, you're done. 10 minutes. He left. So I took my bags and I followed him. And he comes back with a mop and a broom and goes, moving through. He mops the floor, takes the recycling, sharpened the pencil. And like, you're done. You don't have to stay. 30 minutes passed. 60 minutes passed. Now I started to feel I'm the one detained. 90 minutes. Please go home. And he said, can you hook me up with a ride? Yes. Yes, I will take you home. And I drive the kid and like, wow. And we reached this huge house with a metal fence around. I'm like, you live here? And he goes, yeah. I dropped him off. I looked up and it said, carry home for the orphans. And my heart just like I sank. I couldn't even breathe. And I think that's the moment when I realized that kids deeply crave to connect,
Yeah.
even if it comes with consequences. And I think it was that kid that made me determined that I will find that skill that I need. And I started working with the community. I one day I had like the kids, sometimes kids don't have empathy because they did not have that experience. They didn't feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started teaching history, and I was told I had to teach Japanese because, Indiana, Lafayette, Indiana, there was a Subaru Isuzu. So the intent is to, if they drop out of school, they can work in the factory and they need Japanese, but the kids didn't see that. So like one kid came to me and goes, so what am I going to do with this? Go to Tippecanoe Mall and find somebody who needs Japanese? And like, what do you want me to do? And he said, can we learn something useful? I'm like, what? And he goes like, build a skating rink. And I grew up in North Africa. What do I know about skating or skating rink? I thought it was skating ring. And I said, sure, meet me after school. 72 kids showed up to school. And he goes, so are you going to teach us? And I says, okay, let's get this done. And those eighth graders raised $1 million and got the skating rink done. And it all comes because of the power of language. Like I said, instead of telling yourself, why me? And you'll have answers. If I say, why me? Oh, yeah, because I'm this, I'm that. But if you change it to what is another way, every time you have any challenge, you'll be amazed at the outcomes that unfold in front of you.
Leila, that's such an incredible introduction of just talking about your experience. And something from that, if I back up into that, what I'm feeling is, so we're talking about the language and the special gift that you have, which I'm thinking people really get when they get to be with you, because I'm feeling it right now, is that no matter what, you're asking questions, the curiosity, you're helping people actually see and hear themselves. Like, so it wakes somebody up into starting to listen about what somebody's saying, the repercussions. And I feel, even going a little bit deeper in this, is that it all of a sudden helps them show up because they feel safe, and that brings on brave space and seeing that life can be better than what they may think in their bubble. So my question is, with that kind of consciousness, what have you been able to do? Because this is a big scale of how many kids showed up. What's happening right now when you're utilizing these skills that you're talking about? Can we talk first about how you're working this flow to be able to support others? Because I saw some real holistic, interesting things about kind of the tools that you use to kind of get that voice. But another thing is, I'll ask you the question after that. But if we can start there so I can understand your skill, because there's things you've been creating and how you're getting that to be able to support that conversation to where you are now and how you're helping people.
I think whether you are the person doing this or you're the person, let's say it's me or you, and maybe you came to me and you say, Leila, I need your help with, let's say, social media. So the worst thing I can do for you, and the worst thing that you can do is for me to give you advice, because advice, I always think of it as ad plus vice. And because what works for somebody may not work for somebody else. So for me, I actually don't like advice, because I got advice, I followed it. And I always, 100% of the time, I failed. And so I think the minute you start accepting advice or giving advice, we are operating from a very limited point of view.
Oh, I love where this is going. Keep going, but I love it. I love it.
So
Thank you.
when my student, so I'll share with you another group of students, and every single year we did something really big. I taught about the Japanese American experience because I really wanted to have empathy. And we had no books. So I went to the library and all I could find was picture books. They read the books and they became angry. So is this our history? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And they were so distraught, these eighth graders, because they understand unfairness. So the Japanese Americans fought for our country during World War II and we mistreated them. I said, that's what it is. But I didn't want to, because I'm not Japanese Americans, I didn't live the history. So I said, what if you reach out to this community? We had no money. They did a car wash, blew it all on stamps, and would send letters. And all we knew back then, there was no social media. I would say, hashtag hardship. Go to Google and reach out to anybody with a Japanese sounding name, and it created a movement. Like, these kids want to learn. And they had this idea and goes, Ms. Kubesch, we want to turn the school courtyard into a Japanese Zen garden. And the first thing that came to mind is how I brought a plastic plant to my classroom to decorate it. I plopped it by a heat register. It turned brown. I killed a plastic plant. I am not a candidate for gardening. I'm the last person who needs to do this. And all I could say is, I decided to mention what I don't have. I says, I don't have garden supplies. The bell rang the next day. I was teaching 186 kids. That's why I remember 185 shovels that walked into my classroom and a wheelbarrow. Well, looks like you're going to be gardening. But what we have done, when we allow whether it's a child or an adult to think of an answer that works for them. And so I became this person who guides them through communication skills, or what if? So I use a lot of what if. What if we did this? What if we called this? And they would find the people and they raised everything they needed for the garden. So it wasn't all money. And so that's why I don't think we should ever ask for advice. What do you think I should do? No. What do you ask yourself that question instead of asking somebody else with more limited ideas and thoughts. So instead of, I have some ideas, let me bounce some ideas. And a lot of the times you don't need a person. As crazy it may be, you can write them down. Somebody supportive to support you and say, let's try it. And so using what if, I found it so much empowering than asking for advice. Yeah. Because when you ask for what if, you're very likely to, in education, a lot of the time, my bosses, I had principals that said, we need to think outside the box. And every time I suggest an idea, that he said no. And I'm like, how can I think outside the box? I can't even think inside the box. This education is stifling our creativity. So I just learned not to ask. Let the students do it and go ahead and tell the parents and the community, you're not going to do this, or you don't like their idea. And so that's one way to go around it. I think if you find I always tell myself this: if every window is closed, every door is shut, you may have to jump as high as you can, go through the roof, or maybe there's a back door.
Leila, I'm just sitting here listening to this, and it's just like I'm listening to a lovely motivational. It's like sitting down and feeling how easy life is, and it's because what you're doing is you're doing something very natural. So, in what you're doing, but you're displaying it. Can we take a step back? So the first thing is you're talking about don't ask for advice. I'm not going to give you advice. You're like, oh, so that can be taking somebody back, like, what? But understanding as you're explaining, but I'd like to kind of have you break this down more, like what you're really actually doing in a little bit more detail. But I love that you are saying, I'm just going to get curious. I'm going to ask questions.
Sure.
And somehow you're going to know the answer. So that helps somebody realize really how smart they are, instead of like, please tell me, please tell me. And I think that's what we need more in this world, is not somebody to tell you what to do, but allow exactly what you're doing. Like that safe space. So somebody really opens up and says, oh my gosh, I'm smarter than what I realized, because like what you said, the narrow space.
Yeah.
I think this will really help. Is I just kind of said what you're doing, but what is it what's your special gift? How do you explain this? Because how can you get a few kids or one kid that's having a really big issue to all of a sudden they do something so wonderful about bringing more kids on the every butt and motivating kids to actually be with you doing stuff when this kid was in trouble and having these issues. And if you stayed with that and said, you are in trouble because of this, and this is how I feel, so now you're disciplined, now I'm going to take, like, going that route, there's something special you're doing. So can you share that? Because I think that's where the beautiful bouquet really
I think most of us, there are two things. Most of us are afraid of making mistakes. And I deep down, I mean, I recognize it. I call myself a master of mistakes. I'm willing to learn. So several years ago, it started many years ago, where each year I would challenge myself. This is not a New Year resolution. This is where I challenge myself to learn something for an entire year. And I don't stop until and I did this with grant writing. I was angry. I went to my school district and this grant writer, and she says, you have to, and I says, we have no funding. Can you teach me how to do this? And she said, well, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's. And I left like, I'm not going to write this on a napkin. And I realized, oh, and then I realized that was a lack mindset. And I spent an entire year learning. And the way how I became an expert at grant writing, I would download applications from places I know I'm not going to write it. Like, I'm not technology. But some grant application will, in the question, they would explain to you the terminology.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I can understand this. Or they give you an example, like, oh, you match fund. I'm like, how am I going to come up with $10,000 to match this? And they would say the space. I'm like, oh, classroom, that's not my house. The technology, the resources, the support. Yeah. So then I would write these big grants and I would win. So one is trying new things, and don't think of it as failure. Think of it as a process of elimination. Yeah. In my TED talk one time, I talked about how I wrote a grant for $3,500 and I got turned down. Mm-hmm. And I was crushed because my students really counted on that. So I found another grant. I used the same application, the same title. I just added a zero, and I asked $35,000 and I won. So now I'm grateful that I got turned down for the first one. So think of it as process of elimination other than failure. Think of it as learning. And a lot of the time when I work with people and I coach them, I understand, I can see me in them. Is a lot of the time we know things, but we minimize our learning. We minimize our skills because we're not using it. Like for me, for a long time, so English is not my first, second, or third. And so for a long time, I struggled with English. But I had a lot of skills because I would volunteer for all of these things. I can go to a house and do all the electrical thing. And it started out, I did not know what Habitat for Humanity. So I go
Mhm.
and I thought, oh my God, I don't want to paint. I don't want to do anything. I'm going to get out of it. So I go in there and I say, so what would you like to do? So I thought, I'll lie. I'll tell them electricity so they can tell me to go home. And I said, I'll do the electrical work. And she goes, yeah, sure. And I said, no, I'm not certified. She goes, that's fine. She goes, I'm not licensed. All I know is how to turn on the switch on and off. She goes, that's fine. And I was fascinated. Wow, I can learn something man can do. Oh my God, sign me up. And I did. And I came to my house. Now I can look at like, oh my God, this house is, the electrical is faulty. I told my mother not to buy this particular place. So I got really good at this.
Oh my, I'm just like dying in this. I know
And
you're gonna keep going because there's good stuff,
but
but
the thing
I'm loving this, Leila.
but you know, the thing is, a lot of the thing we have a skill that we know from years ago, we may not know. And so now I would say the darkness you went through could be the light for someone else. So that's why you don't give advice, but you can share resources.
I'm just hearing the moral to the story right there too. I think we're at the tail end here. This is magical, structured in a way that if you feel like you're trying to get somewhere, instead of just sitting in space because of holding yourself in space because of fear of failure, go out there and go talk to people, go do what you're almost like what your body is naturally going to do. If you start saying, hey, a failure really actually isn't a failure, and to not be an electrician but get a job as an electrician, but and you're now all of a sudden helping a family member, so it tethers on everything. You're very unique, and I know that's how you got that TEDx conversation, why people want to interview you and you have all these followers. I hear the moral of the story for you. It's like naturally coming to you, but what are you learning at your age right now, and the stuff that you have been doing that may be new that you didn't know when you first started doing these things and started recognizing that you had a skill of this? Where were you now? Where's your challenge at? There's like, I just recently learned this, and this is going to be my next vision on how to bring people together. Is there anything you're working on, or?
I think what I'm learning is the scarcity mindset. You know, like for me, when I coach people, I don't
Yeah.
want them to keep coming back. Like for me, I want them to get, I will give them everything. So a lot of time when I'm coaching people by phone, or it can be by phone or by Zoom, I want them to be so successful. And I listen to them, here are all their resources, and go, Leila, oh my God, you helped me. I'm taking so many notes. My wrist is hurting. I don't want them to keep coming because a lot of the time people share very little. So for me, let's pick one thing you are struggling with. Is it that book? Let me tell you how I got to number one, new release in 3 categories. This is what I have done. And I look, or let me look at your LinkedIn, or so a lot of the time I think it's the perspective where we're looking at. So a lot of people, when they look at my LinkedIn profile, they look at 20,000 followers.
Yeah.
But what they don't see is that doesn't matter. Or they look at engagement, that actually doesn't matter. So what I use LinkedIn is I use it to build a relationship and reciprocity. When I reach out to somebody, let's say I'm looking to somebody who's, let's say the mayor. And I said, which is true, I invited the mayor to come to my classroom. And it was such a huge honor. And I would invite all these celebrity, these brain surgeon and these models and all these people to come to talk to my students. Well, we don't have school buses. We don't have funding for field trips, but I can bring all these people to create this window on the world. And we created a TV talk show, since Youth Voices in Cincinnati and Voices Without Borders, so they can do it in their own language. And I would bring in these people. And so whenever I reach out to somebody, I offer something to them to make it so powerful for them.
Yeah.
What is it that you're looking for? You know, so think about reciprocity. So an example, recently I was driving to New York, and somebody reached out to me and says, you know, I really want to chat with you. would you be willing to help me? I said, absolutely. We were talking for 3 hours. And he said, Leila, I learned so much from you. And I had one ask. I said, I am working on my certificate for coaching. Would you be willing to write 1 or 2 sentences on LinkedIn to, if this brought you value? He goes, absolutely. It was amazing. It was the best thing. I'm going to do this tonight. But he didn't.
Oh.
And that is what people forget, that giving part. This guy named Frank Kitchen, he is a phenomenal speaker, and he donated 1 hour professional one-on-one. And I thought, what can I give this guy? I was at the airport for an entire day, just flying to place. But one other thing, I'm really good at poetry. I can turn anything into a poem.
Mm-hmm.
And I do this because I struggled with English. When I started learning, I would say inu, and people say, no, it's not inu, it's enough. And I said, where's the F? And they say, O-U-G-H. Oh, okay. Although, no, it's although. Like, no, O-U-G-H is an F. And I'm like, inu is inu. And so what I would do, and then you have although and through, and I couldn't get them in my head. So I would write a poem that would rhyme. Till this day, if a poem doesn't rhyme, because you say you can have a poem that doesn't rhyme. Well, according to Leila, that is not a poem because it doesn't help me at all. So I went to this guy's website and I studied everything, his speeches, and I wrote a whole long recommendation. Like I made an SEO poem about what he does. And I waited for that a month before I gave it to him. Like, I don't know, does he think it's good? I mean, I would love if somebody did that for me. I finally gave him that poem. He spent thousands and he turned that into his demo reel. Until this day, and that was a year ago, he talks about it. So giving something of your time that equates what gave you, that appreciation, whatever that may be, to reciprocate. If it meant something to you, elevate that person by saying, what can I do? How can I reciprocate? If you use that in your language, you will have so many people reaching out and helping you.
Thank you, my friend. We've learned a lot with having the space with you. I know there's going to be people that want to connect with you. In the link right now, I have your LinkedIn profile, maybe the website too, or is there a specific page you want people to go to? Or
a LinkedIn, they can reach out. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I hold nothing back.
You're lovely in how you express what you're doing. When you were growing up, is this unique in your household? Did you learn something from your family, or is this something that you just realized was a gift that you were just born with and somehow it naturally is helping these people, all these people we're talking about?
I grew up very lonely because I'm an only child, and I struggled to understand the culture. I went to a school where there were nuns, but the country is Muslim, so there was that distinction. And I didn't see really eye to eye to the people. Women are supposed to learn how to do like embroidery and learn to become housewives early on. That part, deep down, I wanted to climb the trees. So I was a bit different. And so I struggled, and I wanted to find a way, how can I connect with people? And I came here, made it even harder because I didn't speak the language. But I found that if helping, and so every day to me, I think of 3 acts of kindness. Okay, today I messed up. I went to the gym and I picked this guy's mat and put it away. And he says, I'm going to stay for the next class. So we chuckled. We had a laughter, but you keep going. Like, that's what I'm going to do every day.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for your time. Fresh Talks Global Vision at this space where we're live in a couple places. Please tell me what you got from this. Open up your heart and really think about where this can take you as you listen to it a second time. Take some notes, because the more that you put it in your cells, your DNA, writing and listening, it'll help you know the magic of what Leila is talking about right here. Because I know you can hear it, but as soon as you exit out, you may forget, because this is pretty darn unique. And I think the loneliness, we think about these hardships in our life, and it's like, I know it feels something right now. It doesn't feel good, but I know something good is going to come out of it. And I believe that. It's like I'm really having one of those days today. It's just, when we couldn't get on together for a bit, I go, I'm having one of those days, it started early today. And this is perhaps, the energy in the space. Well, what can we lean in and learn? And so I love being raw and vulnerable. I know we have tough days. There's so many other people are having the tough days too. So let's keep showing up for each other, no matter what's going on. Don't hide in a shell. Don't lose yourself in there. Get curious. Don't give people advice because you only know so much, but give people information about questions and curiosity, because that person in front of you may not even know how smart they are. They may be people that you think they're struggling. I don't even think they know much, because sometimes we can be mean like that, where we're just judging. So let's get in there and start loving on each other more. Hashtag speaker locking arms. Let's open up the voice to help people stop blaming and shaming themselves, stop blaming and shaming ourselves, so we can get out there and make these changes and add what Leila Kubesch is talking about. Love you, my friend. Namaste, everybody.